right, we can get started. I'll call to order here at 10:02. We're at the downtown parking board meeting in case you're in the wrong place. Is there anyone from the public who would like to open up our agenda today?
I don't see anybody.
I don't see Blair, so okay, very good. Blair, we miss you. You put that in the minutes.
He was at council yesterday, so I was Heather and I were expecting him to be here. So Blair, next time.
It's still time. It's still time. Consent calendar. Anybody want to pull anything off of the consent calendar? Are we okay with the stuff that was on there for approval?
It's the 2 minutes for March and April.
Okay, we'll
Just get a motion to approve.
No, we don't. If they're on consent, we don't need to motion, right?
We still need to approve it.
Okay.
So anybody not approving it, I'll just leave it at
yeah.
For
that's why I asked if anybody needed to be pulled off of consent, because
Charlie, I think you still have to approve it, but you just don't have. There's no discussion.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of the consent calendar?
Yeah.
Aye.
Perfect.
Opposed? Okay, carries 5-0, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Why don't we go ahead and defer then the elections until we see if Henry's going to join us?
I'd say we just vote him in.
Okay. Well.
But we can be polite and do it in front of them. So, all right. So let's jump to the annual, the work plan.
Sure. I'll go ahead and pull that up. I'll share my screen here. So this doesn't deviate. I don't know. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is kind of the standard work plan that we have. Dates of the 4 upcoming meetings: September 7th, November 2nd, March 1st, and June 7th. Most of the items in the work plan are carryovers from all of our other kind of annual typical stuff, budgets, work plan, and the annual report to the T&E committee in September, various financial updates, CIP updates, the standing kind of marketing updates from the Downtown Association, placeholders for parking programs and rates. And of course, we can add stuff throughout the year, but this is kind of just the base template, if you will. Heather, I know you wanted to touch on one additional item that we might consider putting on here for later in the year.
Right, thanks, Arian. So yesterday at council, there was a discussion around, or agendized item around the parking transportation demand management ordinance. Some of you may have seen that. As part of that discussion, there was a blue memo from Councilmember Mann, and then further discussion regarding the particulars of the Move San Jose plan. The Move San Jose plan has been they've been asked to bring that back to council in fall of 2022 to specifically discuss some items related to parking and parking transportation demand management. Specifically on the ask was unbundling of parking, shared use parking, and what's probably most relevant to the board, demand-driven parking pricing. And that is, if you recall, something we brought to the board about a year ago. I think it was last summer. We had a couple of meetings and some presentations and some discussion on it. And at that time, the board declined to move forward, and asked that we hold off and pause on any further discussions on demand-based or dynamic pricing for a year. And that year would be October of 2022. So we wanted to we didn't put it on the work plan for you. We didn't assign it. So we wanted to have your input on it. And in light of what was discussed and what went to council and the specific interest from council on that piece that is documented in the Move San Jose plan. We wanted to bring it to you and see where you would like to fit it on your work plan, if you want to see it on your work plan, because it is going to come up at council this fall. And there could be some additional direction at that time back to the board, but we wanted to kind of open it up to you and see what the temperature was and what your guys' feeling on putting it on the work plan proactively for starting those discussions, or if you are a hard no and want to wait. So if Erin, maybe you can pull back up the work plan, and maybe we can look at kind of where our meetings will fall. So we put the hiatus, which would put us at October of 2022. That was the year-long pause on that. So taking that in consideration, if you were okay, we could put it on November or March or June for further discussion and consideration. Keeping in mind that the direction from council yesterday was for staff to come back to discuss the Move San Jose plan in fall of 2022.
So I sent a note to Arian a couple of days ago, on this topic, and I guess it comes back to what's the charge of this board, and so maybe if you guys can reacquaint us with what the charge of this board is, because frankly, I thought this would have come to this board prior to going to council the other night. And we're the parking board, and so to me, all things parking would stop at this board, and we would opine on that, and whether council listens to it or staff listens to us, that's their prerogative. But why do we have a parking board if stuff like this doesn't come before us? That's my 2 cents. But Arian, if you could give us what our charge and our mission is, and that way I could be corrected, that's for sure.
No, I don't think you're incorrect. I think the charge is more specifically aligned to the downtown. So of course, the unbundling of parking, or the elimination of parking minimums, is a effort. It isn't directed just at downtown. It's the citywide. Does it affect downtown? Sure, because it is citywide. The charge of the downtown parking board, summed up, I'm kind of looking at the website. Review, evaluate, and make recommendations to city council regarding the city's downtown parking programs, the health and financial stability of the parking fund, and the use of parking revenues. We also review and make recommendations on downtown parking needs, including the expansion, addition, or improvement of parking facilities, programs, and parking operations. So it is really somewhat narrowly limited to existing parking operations. We also extend that to parking meters. The downtown, I think we blur that line to say all meters, so that extends outside of downtown to areas like Japantown, that isn't necessarily in what the city considers to be the downtown area, but it is a parking program. A meter is more, globally a system, so we do kind of bring those pieces to you guys. But my comment back to you, Charlie, in that email was that the specificity around the element that was coming to council was around this eliminating of parking minimums, which isn't a DOT effort. Is there people within DOT that are involved in the periphery of it? Sure, but it wasn't our team. It didn't touch our existing operations. But I would say that in a way, we were mindful of that. And that's part of the reason we brought forward the parking program, the commercial parking program, because we knew we would start to get requests and inquiries about parking from any developer that may say, well, great, now I don't have to build parking. Let me just come to the city. So we were kind of being out in front of that, and that we did bring that to you. And then I know Jessica Zank's team in the DOT planning group did bring the TDM, kind of this parking minimum conversation, to the board earlier in the year, or maybe it was even last year. and did give a presentation during a special meeting back in, I think it was, so was it September of last year or October? So it was discussed. I don't know that it was an action item for the parking board because it doesn't necessarily follow. It was more of an informational element. So that's kind of my initial response on that.
Other people's thoughts?
I always have a comment. So we're having new council in January, right? And the council members who are focused on downtown and this stuff will be changing, but this is coming up in October, is what you just told us. Is it already programmed into the city as being on an agenda item in October, or?
No, the request to return for further discussion on those specific items is, quote, fall of 2022.
Okay, so I guess the question would be,
September,
is that
October.
if you put your vision hat on, are they going to take action before the new council in January?
I think what the request was is just to further the discussion. I don't know that there's going to be any kind of necessary solid action at that point.
So I guess
I
my
would
response,
say no.
yeah, my response would be, the question for us then, as I would pose it, is do we want to be prior to that or wait and hear what they have to say and then opine after they've had this next session? And I don't have the answer, but it's
Well, the horse
something.
is out of the barn at that point.
Yeah,
Well, then
I
you answer
don't.
the question. You want to opine before that happens.
To me, that's why we're here, is to
Right.
give advice and counsel
I'm
to
not
staff
disagreeing.
and to the city council.
No
Telling them
disagreement.
after the fact that the horse left the barn, I think they look at us and say, where were you 3 months ago or 6 months ago when we could have used you?
Yeah, so in my take on this is in fall of 2022, I don't see that they are going to have a detailed plan in front of them specifically related to demand-driven or dynamic pricing. I think it's a conversation of, in general, what does that entail and what does that mean? Almost kind of like defining it to be a little more specific, because it's not overly specific in the Move San Jose plan. It just lists it as kind of demand-driven parking pricing. So kind of expanding that a little bit and saying, this is what that could entail, as opposed to a hard plan and a recommendation to say, we're going to move to demand-based pricing in these areas at these times and these bands. It would not be a fully baked kind of plan for them to approve.
Okay, so
But it would be
questions would be,
discussed.
my questions would be, is the staff prepared to make whatever kind of a report or presentation to us in September about this thing that's not well defined for us to then take a position? Or when would that happen? Or what do you think we ought to do? I guess, because yeah, I guess two last quick comments. Number one, you're not going to be having demand things in West San Jose. This demand stuff is really all downtown in general, isn't it? That's the only place you have, or in China or Japantown, where there are meters. You can't demand where there's free parking everywhere. So it really isn't our hut. And then the second comment is, this is a really big deal. This is not a small change in the way things are run. So that's all I have to say. I mean, I don't have the answer to any of this stuff, but it's big and it's us. It's not, Evergreen isn't going to be affected by this at all, are they? I don't think.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. Henry. Henry, get on mute.
Hear me?
Yep.
I mean, in the long term, are we going to use our public parking facilities to subsidize development, particularly in the downtown?
I wouldn't say subsidize. I mean, I think the establishment of the commercial real estate parking program that was just passed by council yesterday, for all intents and purposes, actually charges them market or higher rates for the use of any parking that would get locked up by developers. So no, I don't see it being a subsidy relative to that. I think the conversation is more tied to this concept of demand-based pricing. And that would extend, I think, both to on-street meters and to the garages. You know, typically for the most part, well, entirely the on-street meters are just the price is the price between, you know, 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. 6 days a week. It is what it is. The off-street is a little more dynamic, but I'd say about 90% of the time the rate is posted on the board. You know what it's going to be on a Tuesday, as well as it's going to be on a Saturday night, as well as it's going to be. Now there's special event rates that we charge, and that would be some element of our demand responsive pricing. So really the Market Street garage and the Convention Center garage and a couple of our surface lots around the Convention Center do have a element of demand responsive pricing because we charge a fixed kind of event rate during some of those key times. But in a more broader sense, the traditional just weekday daytime parking is published and is the rate. So I think we'd be looking at least investigating and bringing forward, Heather, and, you know, tell me if I'm wrong here, but bringing forward some, like, here's our thoughts. You know, we might not be recommending necessarily at our level any change in some of these elements, and maybe some we would be looking at. I mean, we know that we already brought forward the concept of a demand-based pricing model for on-street meters last year or the year before, whenever we had kind of bantered that around once or twice. So I think what we're kind of pinging now on this topic, since it's come to council and brought it more to the forefront, is, hey, we had already said we wanted to punt this item last year to no earlier than October of 2022, a year after we kind of turned back the meters back on. So when we were drafting the agenda, we said, or the work plan, we were like, okay, should we put it on at, you know, that November timeline to be consistent with where we were? And ultimately we decided to leave it off and bring it to the board and say, hey, where should we put it? We know we had it. And then it kind of doubled down on it with the council members' memo saying, I direct staff to kind of investigate this. But it is specific to our own operations. I mean, we aren't demand-basing pricing on something that we don't already price and control, like private development or, you know, parking in areas that don't have paid parking. So yeah, Tamiko.
I appreciate that you guys punted this conversation for a year, and I'm open to hearing dialogue about potentials in the coming sessions. But for Japantown's sake, I would really hope that we could look at things for our district a little bit independently of downtown, because we have a fixed number of spaces available and business is not recovering in the same way that we expected to a year out. Our businesses are still about 40% down on revenue, and we're getting hammered by staff shortages and supply chain problems. As far as the aesthetics, I mean, it looks good over here. You know, the morale and vibe is good in Japantown, but I'm hearing a lot of discontent within our businesses about being able to survive. And, you know, I really would like to maintain some stability as far as expectation for our guests, as far as keeping the rate the same, 9 to 6, $2 an hour. It's a very easy thing for people to understand when they come down here. It took us a long time to get used to that rate. And at this point, we don't have to justify it. But any further changes, I think, would be harmful to the visitors and the people who are here. And as taking into consideration the businesses who always complain. Like, I get that there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who always see the glass half empty, but trying to take things from a very independent, as much as I can be independent perspective, we're really struggling. So I would appreciate not having this change implemented, or any potential change implemented right now, or even maybe another year, to be honest. We're having a hard time.
I would venture to guess, and I'm looking at the Heather and Elias, their boxes here on the window, but the positive is that any conversation around this topic would be a little less anecdotal than it was last time, because we can use this last year's kind of information and maybe start collecting information now to say, if we did have any kind of demand responsive pricing based on the concept that we had previously talked about, what would that actually look like? Would your rates actually be $2 an hour? If the activity is suppressed, maybe your rate would have been $1 an hour because we would have had downward rate adjustments. Or maybe there would be a peak period of time where there would be a slightly higher rate, but it also would make sense because it's actually busier. So I think we can start to have some of that data, because I know we brought it forward last time as more conceptual in nature. So if we put this on the agenda multiple times over this next year, it's the opportunity to talk about it, but maybe also tie some real world data to that conversation.
Right. And that's why I said it's not a hard no from us. Like, I think having the conversation is always important. But I'm talking about like outside of the data, the psychology of people parking here. And I'm trying to gauge that kind of where the wave is with regards to that. And right now, finally, people are like, they understand that they have to pay the meters, and they like the consistency of knowing how much it's going to cost to park here in Japantown. So that's just my 2 cents.
Understand. And it's always an option to do a phased approach. We like to phase things in parking and in the city. And so maybe it's a discussion that's in the downtown core, and we, pilot it there and then move it out. It's, there's lots of options and variations, I think, that we can absolutely discuss. Looping back to David's kind of question earlier about would staff be ready in September to bring a recommendation to the board? And my answer is that's a hard no. We punted this and we took it off of our kind of radar because we were going to wait until October. The earliest we would come back would be October 2022, and we knew that was, probably even not likely at that point. And to Arian's comments, we want to collect some data. We're kind of coming out of this recovery, and we are seeing that meter, obviously, parking stays and occupancy and revenue is still significantly down. And we'd like to see where that trend is going. Is it going to flatten out and go stagnant, or are we going to incrementally continue to see growth? To potentially, and are we ever going to get back to where we were previously, or is that just a pipe dream? But collecting information, and not on a one-time basis, but parking is a lot of times, depending on events and what's going on, it's seasonal, and that comes into play when you're collecting our data. We need to make sure that kind of our data collection efforts are long and drawn out, and they're really capture what the cycle is. And the cycle is different too in the exterior than it is in the downtown. So making sure we're accommodating all of those fluctuations when we're pulling our data will be important. So I see that data collection effort to be over a significant time period. So long answer to David's question about we would not be ready to come back in September or October with a hard record.
So Heather,
I think discussion is healthy.
Let me add on to, I think, where David was. So is this going to be on the council's discussion agenda in 4 months, in October, 5 months, whatever? So it's going to be on their agenda to talk about. I think that's what we've kind of said here, that in October it's going to be discussed. We haven't said whether it's going to be punted further down the road yet or not, but it's going to be on their agenda, right?
Yes, it will be on their agenda as a larger kind of, there's 7 or 8 other things that will be kind of encompassed in that discussion. So all of those items will be fairly high level, but yes, it will come back to council to discuss.
Okay. And so I look at this board as being a sounding board for you guys at the city, right? To say, this is what the community is thinking of the city's parking practices. And I would think that the council would want to have your opinion, from the city, the staff, right? As well as the opinion of a parking board that they happen to have sitting in place, and have that input if they're making a decision in October. Now, if this is just information that's going to them and there's no decision process, then I think it's less necessary that we need to weigh in and have an opinion that's on the record of it. But if I think that we got the process wrong. If you guys are presenting to them and you haven't bounced it off of us first.
Yeah, that won't be happening. We will not be presenting. This is not a DOT led response per se. We will have input in it, and it won't. But it is. We are not the lead role on this particular return to council. We will not be putting forward a recommendation with any kind of specific detail. We could reference in the section that talks about dynamic pricing, reference the parking board in the work plan, and just simply, potentially suggest that we say this is on the downtown parking board work plan and will be discussed throughout the year for further, refinement and potential recommendation in the future, or something like that, to acknowledge that needs to be, you guys need to be part of that discussion on that particular piece. And that way then it references work plan, and we can see and say we will be discussing it at these meetings over the next year.
Maybe I can ask a question. John or Laura, do you know what the roadmap of this, change? I don't know if an ordinance or,
It's an ordinance.
Ordinance, yeah. So the parking and transportation demand management ordinance update that went to council. Yeah, what's the roadmap for that item? Does anybody know? Because it isn't a DOT item. I know there's some periphery involvement by DOT, but so that maybe that informs, our roadmap for putting it on our agenda.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find, Laura, I'm trying to find the email on that, but John, I know you were there last night, but what I recall hearing is that we would, we just coming back to them with information, not an action item on this topic. And last night, what was shared with council is that, it's a fairly expensive proposition to have demand-based pricing, for example, on street. And that, at this time, it may not be something that was cost beneficial. Staff who was presenting did not share, info that the parking board had previously, expressed concerns and not wanting to go down that path at this time. Staff were not within, at council were not within the parking team. John, I don't know, you were there.
Well, yeah, I'm a little confused. I was actually on another meeting, so I missed most of this discussion. But Arian, what's the question you're trying to answer again here?
It was really just trying to find out, obviously this item went to council yesterday, but what's
Well,
the
item?
roadmap?
And
Yeah,
there's a lot of
I-
items that went to council yesterday. Which
I can
item are
speak.
you referring to?
The
You're talking
parking
about the
and
TDM item,
TDM
right?
ordinance.
Yeah, I can
The
speak.
which again? The what?
The parking,
The elimination of
TDM,
parking
okay.
requirements.
Yeah.
Well, the
Yeah.
parking and TDM ordinance is the parking item of that was actually getting direction from council how to move forward with regard to eliminating the requirement
Yep.
for minimum parking for new private developments.
Yep.
It possibly could be a public facility as well, but that's all that was. And yes, that item will come back as an ordinance sometime this fall, probably late. before the end of the year, my understanding is. So yes, there will be an ordinance for the council to consider to change those requirements for new development to remove the minimum requirements for parking. Was that the question that you're
Yeah, and
trying to get to?
it was,
As a
and piggybacking off
companion-
of that was Councilmember Mahan's memo directing staff to start considering, you know, this list of stuff, and included in that was the demand-driven pricing of parking.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of things that got attached to this effort.
Yep.
One of the big attachments is, as a component to this, there's a transportation demand management process. We already have one of those, but they wanted us to modify that to try to mitigate potential negative effects of maybe the parking minimum removal. So
Here's the exact language that was approved. When returning to council with the ordinance implementing council's direction on this item, meaning the transportation demand management item, include a discussion, not action, discussion of the following elements and potential improvements to parking operations. And one of those is including a discussion of the modernizing payment solutions for curbside parking, including technologies that enable variable demand-based pricing. So that is just providing council with information.
Yeah, and hi,
Could you-
can I chime in
Dave,
as well?
go ahead.
Yeah, this is David Tran from Councilmember Alvarez's office. I just want to, I appreciate that, Laura, for making that clarification, because that is our understanding that essentially what staff is just bringing back is just information for the council. We are not taking action when the ordinance return on demand price based pricing. It's just, these are just ideas that are my understanding. Again, we're talking to DOT, is that these are things that were being worked on, and that the Councilmember Mahan wanted the council to be privy to when they return back to the council for the ordinance. So we are not taking an action on that, and that is the expectation at the moment.
So maybe we can wrap our conversation back around to the work plan. And where, if I'm assuming everybody wants to slot it in, if I'm wrong, let me know, but where you would like to slot it back into for discussion and kind of.
Well, do you all have
planning.
a recommendation of where we should slot it back into our work plan?
Erin, can you pull up the work plan again? Sorry.
Well, it's either September, November, right? Or March.
Well, it's September if our input is interesting for the council. It's after September if our input isn't required.
Yeah, because it's an informational return to council, I wouldn't be overly concerned about trying to squeeze something in September. I would think later on in the agenda or in the year would be sufficient, but that's ultimately the board's.
And staff can absolutely provide, if it's not in September, can provide to council along with the information, the prior position taken by the board.
This is an example of silence being golden, I guess.
Well, what if we
so-
go? What I would suggest, since we're going over the review and potential revision of existing meter district area reserve in November, maybe we can use information for that to come back in March, and slot the discussion in then, because we'll at least have, if this
Be more informed.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
I like that too. Just a general comment. The reason to do this variable pricing is to make money or to make parking more available for the people who want to use it and therefore use the businesses? Is it which one of those or both?
Option 2.
Or it could be drive.
Could be a combo,
drive
but
behavior.
option 2, and drive and drive and potentially change behavior long term
Okay. Okay.
as an kind of an incremental stepping tool.
Okay, I got it.
But to Laura's point, I think, there's some validity in, if the board is interested in sharing that position, or the, staff can put that into, the record, is that you guys obviously the board had a position last year on demand responsive pricing. It's worth noting that position. And then over the next year, we kind of bring this item a couple of times and present, additional data that would help inform the impacts, or, the pros and cons, and we go from there.
How about we put an item on the September agenda for y'all to report back to us and an update on what's going on with this thing, and then potentially have a full report at a special meeting prior to whenever the city council chooses to do something about this, so we have a chance to opine on it. If they don't need to do anything before our November meeting, then we have our discussion at that point when we have better information.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So September is just an update on the overall city process of this ordinance item. And then November and March, maybe both, then it's more DOT centric on our operational concept / I wouldn't even think we'd be at a recommendation at that point, but it'd just be, the program and how that could look.
I guess what I'm saying in a way is this is a big deal. So why don't you put it on every agenda going forward until it's resolved out, and just provide an update to us on where we are at that point? Does that make sense?
Does to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's see, TDM and parking ordinance. So I'm just making a note here. TDM, parking ordinance update in September, and then demand responsive parking in November, March, and June, and then we can provide TDM ordinance updates as they're relevant in those months as well. Is that good? Yeah. And just as a reminder, this is the draft work plan, and at our next meeting, it'll include these changes and we'll kind of adopt it then.
Before we move off of work plan, I know we focused a lot on this particular item, but is there anything else or any other additions you would like to see to the draft plan?
Why don't you put it back up on the screen so we all have it in front of us again?
Yep. Sharing.
Yeah, you got Deer Done on there 3 times. So that to me, that's the next big thing that's going on as well. So I think that's appropriately covered.
Yeah, it's a placeholder as there's kind of information that we can share. Okay.
We all good? Non-voting item, right? This is just information.
Yep.
Right. All
We'll
right.
bring it next meeting as a kind of to adopt the edits that we've made today.
All right, do we want to go back to elections or you want to move forward with capital and finance?
No, I think we go back to the elections.
Henry, you ready?
I think we did it last year. I created an online poll. So for those in attendance that aren't board members, please don't vote. But I'll pull it up and you guys can vote for the chair and vice chair, and we'll go from there.
I don't like this process.
Let's see.
Well, then I nominate David.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't like the process.
What happens if we get like each of us with one vote?
Then I think Sarah gets it because she's not here.
That's why we were hoping Henry didn't show up tonight. So
It's pretty cool how you can
So there's 4 votes. Is there a 5th coming? If not, we can close it. There it is. All right. Henry Cord is the chair.
well, he has to accept it.
How long do I have?
And now I'll launch the vice chair, and then we can discuss if needed.
I need to learn how to do this. This is pretty cool feature here. Is this in Zoom actually?
Yeah.
You can do this? Oh,
Okay. So, Charlie.
I voted. Oh,
Yeah.
me. Oh, okay. All right. I voted for Henry to be chair and vice chair, but okay.
Is anyone checking that Arian's not just putting up something for show and just deciding who should be chair and vice chair? I think-
Wielding his ultimate power.
Yeah. None of what you did actually counted. I had this already devised. So unless there's, any objection from those that have been nominated and hereby elected, we got Henry as the chairperson and Charlie as the vice chair for fiscal year 22-23. All right. I see applause from Tomiko, so it shall be etched in stone. We can move on to item number 6. I can share my screen. So what we have here is the proposed operating budget. We presented this back in March as well. And what we're showing you is the difference between the March proposed and then the document published in May. Slight changes in some of the amounts, mostly coming out of our budget office. You can see they reduced the revenue by a seemingly odd $219. They decreased the DOT personnel services by a little over $18,000 and increased the DOT contractual. DOT contractual did not include the EcoPass, the city's EcoPass. It's the funding of the VTA transit passes. So that's now baked into that. That increased it by 150,000 or so. And that's a citywide program that the parking fund is being asked to pay for. The overhead line, all funds and budgets are hit with some level of just city overhead costs. Ours actually went down. We had budgeted an increase in that of 5% is what we were anticipating. And not only did we not see an increase, we actually saw a reduction, which was welcome, of 200,000. Our police garage security detail, this is nights and weekends that we deploy overtime police officers on a specific detail of the downtown garages. We had increased that by 3% in our budget just to anticipate staff cost increases. The budget office rounded that down and decreased it to 320,000. Part of one of the mayor's budget messages increased costs to the downtown association relative to the ice rink. Evidently needs additional funding for some improvements of $100,000, so that increased there.
Do we know who's going to be running the ice rink this year?
The Downtown Association is the entity as far as I'm ever aware, but no, I don't have any transparency into that agreement.
The Downtown Association brought in a new individual to run that operation. I forget his name.
Thanks, Henry.
So Arian, I thought there were two 100,000s for
So
the,
this, Laura, you're correct. There has been, since this was published on May 4th, we generated this document earlier in, later in May to get the posting time. But yes, the recent mayor's June budget message happened after this. So there will be additional changes to this from the later June budget message that will be incorporated into the final adopted budget, which will be presented at one of the upcoming meetings.
What line item, Laura?
for the downtown ice rink. The March budget message was to allocate 100,000 for improvements. And because they lost the current operator, I guess there was a need for an additional 100,000 to pursue a replacement operator. Sounds like they have one, but that 100,000 was added in the mayor's budget message to pursue an operator, and if they were not successful in getting one, to put on other events during the holidays.
Thank you.
So that's the operating side of things. Obviously, as Laura said, there'll be some additional changes to the 22-23 budget that ultimately gets adopted, which I believe is slated for later this month, June 21st. So we'll be bringing forward, once we actually bring the 22-23 budget, which would be probably in September. At the September meeting, we'll have some information on the first couple of months and the adopted budget. In addition to that is the CIP. This is a copy and paste of the proposed budget CIP document straight from the city's budget. There's an overview for your reading pleasure. And then kind of the meat is here. Not significantly different than what was presented at the March meeting. I think one of the items that I saw changed was this facade line item. The monies that are listed here, we had actually 0 in 22-23, but this line item over here was 4.4 million. We knew we wouldn't spend it in this year, so they reduced that to 1.9 and carried over the remaining balance over to 22-23. Aside from that, the numbers are effectively the same as what was presented at the March meeting, with the bulk of the funding in the CIP in this initial year, placeholders in many of the lines across the budget for kind of sustaining existing operations and maintenance of the facilities, with no special projects, if you will, out there. I know, David, you had a question specifically to this $9.2 million greater downtown parking inventory. That's tied to the development of parking in the Diridon area and acquisition of property if necessary. So that money is set aside for those two sites, what we call the Milligan and the Lot E site. They've been on the books and on the radar for parking for several years now. Public Works is working on those projects to bring them online. It will far exceed that amount, I expect, between the development and the property acquisition that's necessary. So, but right now we have that as a placeholder.
Quick question, is that we are almost defining our city as downtown, downtown east, and downtown west. Is this actually downtown west?
I guess if you're using the kind of Googleville nomenclature of downtown west, then yes, this would fall within that sphere, but it's directly tied to the city's responsibilities to meet the parking obligations of the agreement between the city and the Sharks, if you will. There's a specific number of parking spaces that need to be provided to the arena. And so this funding is being set aside to meet those needs.
That's an acre of land right now, right?
What's that?
That's only an acre of land.
The development sites?
No, the $10 million, the
Oh.
9.2 million.
Yeah, like I said, it will exceed that. We're not necessarily, we're the funding source more than the movers, shakers, and negotiators on what ultimately happens out there.
Right.
So that's kind of just an update on the 22-23 budget from when we presented it last time, just kind of some of the highlighted changes.
There's no action item, correct?
This is not an action item. This is just an update. Like I said, between when we come and then when it's actually adopted, there's going to be some changes. I don't expect there to be many on the capital side. I think that's fairly buttoned up. I haven't heard of any significant changes on that side. The operating is where there continues to be the March budget message from the mayor, then it trickles, and then there's the June budget message, which just recently happened, and there's changes beyond that, and then it'll finally be adopted at the end of the month. So, absent any questions, that's all I've got on this. Looking back at the agenda, review and potential revision of existing meter district area reserve. Heather, you want to take that one?
Sure, we have a very brief verbal update. So conversations are continuing on the backside, or making sure we're dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's. Our most recent conversations we've had around this, the micro reserves, was with the city attorney's office to kind of confirm, to see if there were any foreseeable challenges legally, and how we form these potential reserves and what they're used for, and the mechanisms to trigger those funds. If there was any concerns or any challenges that we may face. And their initial read was that they did not foresee any major issues, but they needed to do a little bit more research, and they would be getting back to us shortly. As of this morning, we have not received confirmation back from them, so we will follow up with them accordingly. In that meeting, we also had OCA to kind of discuss potential uses of funds and how we may move forward with, if micro reserves are set up, how the mechanisms to then get those to the community, that money to the community. So those conversations are continuing, and we will have hopefully some additional kind of concrete information to share our next time around. So if there's no questions, that's all I have for that update.
Thanks, Heather. Marketing program next.
Yeah. Julie Carlson's here from the Downtown Association. She can share some updates on what they've done over the last year. Julie, you're on mute.
There we go. I was on mute. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm Julie Carlson. I'm the marketing director at the Downtown Association. And so we have been partnering with the city and Department of Transportation for many years. And through our messaging in our communications and marketing campaigns, our goal is to increase revenue and parking activity in the garages and increase awareness of the garages, the Park SJ brand, as well as the various parking programs. One of the key vehicles we use for communicating out this messaging is through the Park SJ website. We maintain the website and we ensure it's current and up-to-date information. We just recently upgraded the platform, the WordPress platform and theme. And so it is now more user-friendly and on all devices. And then just recently, our web lead over the last couple of months has been working with DOT and Chantry, and they're working on in the process of setting up reservations on the website, similar to the airport's parking system. During the pandemic, visitors to the parking website dropped off, but since the last year, numbers have been going up, and more than 20,000 people have visited the site this past month. And we expect those numbers to increase over the next couple of months since all of the summer events are in full swing. The most popular visited pages are, of course, the parking map, the list of lots and garages, monthly parking passes, and the 90-minute free parking program. Our staff also does a lot of outreach and community engagement about parking, and we work with our downtown marketing partners, whether it's the businesses, the arts groups, restaurants, convention and event producers, to encourage them to promote parking and all of their marketing materials in their website. And then we also include parking in our weekly Downtown or Online, our Thursday message to our members on our website, as well as social media and all of our marketing materials for our events. And then many downtown businesses promote parking on their websites as well. Just to name a few, let's see, Hotworks, Orange Theory, Heroes Martial Arts, Studio Climbing Gym, Higher Fire, some of our arts groups like Broadway San Jose, and then of course we promote parking in on the Farmers Market, City Dance, San Pedro Square Market. The library that promotes it as well, San Jose Made. So those are just a few, but many more promoted as well. As far as our events and promotions, people come downtown for events, promotions, arts, and dining. And so it's really important to let them know where to park, because I think that's one of those things that people are like, where am I going to park? So we continue to promote 90 minutes of free parking in the 5 Park SJ garages. And then we also try to direct people specifically which garage to park in, depending on the event. We also provide ads for many of these events in the parking garages on the park screens. And again, it lets people know that there's a lot of things happening downtown, and then it lets them know where the closest garage is. In 2021 and 22, we focused on 3 main events that we felt would drive most people downtown at the time, because we didn't know for sure which events would be happening due to COVID. So we focused on the Farmers Market, Dine Downtown, and Starlight Cinemas. So in May of 2021, the Downtown Farmers Market moved to SOFA after being in San Pedro for 20 years. Since then, based on data and declining attendance on that block of the 400 block of SOFA, we have now moved again this May to the 300 block, and we've moved from Fridays 10 to 2 to Wednesdays 3 to 7. The goal was to better serve our members, residents in San Jose State, as well as employees when they come back downtown. You know, we had hoped that more employees and office workers would have been coming back downtown last year, but it seems to be slow. So we decided to move the market and address and reach the people that are downtown. So the campaign promotes parking, the 90 minutes free parking, and it promotes the second and San Carlos garage because it's right there. But this year we're also offering care cash, which is money that you can spend at the market. So if anybody brings their Park SJ validation, Park SJ parking ticket with them, which you need to carry it with you anyway, right? To pay when you're heading back to your car, we give them care cash. So this has only been going on for about a month, but we have been getting a lot of people bringing their parking tickets over. And then we also do something similar with VTA, which we've been doing for years. And if somebody shows their VTA card, they also get care cash. And we are up to about $100 a week now, handing out care cash to VTA riders. And so we're hoping that our numbers will get to that number as well for people showing us their parking tickets. We also have had a few people that have showed us their monthly parking card. And so we also give them care cash for that. Dine Downtown is another one of our big events. We promote all of our restaurants downtown, and that is one of our largest group of businesses. So Dine Downtown is our version of Restaurant Week. And then last year, the event was July 1st through the 18th. And then this year, we're already working on it, and it's July 21st to the 31st. We have 17 restaurants signed up for so far. We usually have about 25 to 30. So we're still working on signing up more. And then because the restaurants are spread out through all of downtown, we promote 90 minutes of free parking in all of the Park SJ garages. And then we encourage the restaurants that participate to promote the closest garage to their business. Starlight Cinemas returned to St. James Park last year on Wednesdays. This year it is returning to St. James Park, but we are going to be partnering with Viva Parks and moving it to Saturdays. We're hoping that by coinciding with the Viva Parks activations, which are a little bit right before the movies, that we'll draw a larger family audience. Moviegoers can grab food from downtown businesses, or they can grab something from the food truck that will be on site. And again, we promote the Market and San Pedro and the 3rd Street garages as the closest parking garages to Starlight Cinemas. In addition to these events that we focused on, we always promote parking in all of our marketing materials. After a year hiatus, Music in the Park came back last year for one concert, and we brought more than 4,500 people out to Plaza Park. This year, we are transitioning Music in the Park to a new event producer and helping them produce 4 concerts. The first concert is this Friday. We're also working with the Office of Cultural Affairs to market, advertise, and promote City Dance. Hold on. There you go. Last year, City Dance was on first Fridays at the Circle of Palms. This year, it kicks off tomorrow night, 3rd Thursdays, and it's going to be again at the Circle of Palms. And then lastly, we continue to promote Sonic Runway. We promoted the installation that happened last November, and we reminded people to park in the 4th Street garage, which was the closest garage to Sonic Runway. And OCA is working on an activation calendar for the summer, so we will be promoting their activations as we get that calendar. And then Downtown Ice was mentioned. We did promote Downtown Ice last year. And we have transitioned, we did transition over to an event producer. Scott is working, talking to that event producer as well as a couple others about this year's ring. And I don't have an update on that right now, but I do know that he is in discussions with that. In addition to our events, we also do some marketing campaigns where we promote parking as well. And in May, we kicked off our Share the DTSJ Love campaign, and it was strictly a social media campaign. And so each week we had a different feature of businesses. So the first week was tacos, burritos. The next week was coffee, tea, boba. And you could see sweets and treats and sandwiches. So people who visited these businesses in the category during that week took a picture with their food and drink and or in front of the businesses and tagged the business, and SJD were entered to win $100 gift cards to downtown businesses. And then to support the businesses, we purchased $50 gift cards from 12 businesses in each of the categories. So we purchased $50 gift cards from over almost 50 businesses. And then at the very end of the promotion, the people that participated in every week or the most, they were entered to win into $200 gift cards. And so we had hired a social media consultant to help us promote the campaign, and they brought in some social media influencers. And so these influencers visited about 20 of our businesses over the month and created videos at each of these businesses. And the thing is we didn't have as many people like taking pictures and posting the pictures, but there was a lot of engagement on our posts, and people were talking about their favorite places and where they go and what they do. Parking was included in all of our posts, and you can see right here the little car. And we received some of our highest audience reach and engagements during this campaign. One of our the most talked about engagement was orange sauce for tacos and burritos week. Like, what's your favorite orange sauce? I mean, we reached like 11,000 people with that one post. So we are hoping to continue on this social media campaign, not this one specifically, but to continue to bring in influencers. And we also have a TikTok now too. And just from this one campaign, we had people sign up on our TikTok. So we're going to be promoting parking in all of our posts as well. And then for 22-23, we're going to continue to focus on recovery, because we are still recovering. The weekends are getting busy. You can see the restaurants and the nightclubs are doing well, but the daytime businesses still need some love. And so we're hoping to drive people back downtown into businesses and into the Park SJ garages. And we also hope to see more office workers this year. We are working with the Knight Foundation on a grant. And so we are going to be bringing on a data analyst, because we plan to use more of a data-driven approach and start incorporating more internal and external data into our communications and marketing efforts this coming year. We are looking at segmenting like our varied audiences to better understand what content is relevant to each audience. We are looking at ways that we can reach San Jose State students as well as downtown residents. And we're looking at pedestrian counts and event attendance as well. And we'd also like to look at parking usage data over the last couple years to see if this data might help us tell a story about how things are going downtown. So that's what we've been doing, and that's where we are going. And we're looking forward to working together again in 22-23 contract.
Thanks, Julie.
Awesome. Thank you. We love you, Julie.
Thank you.
Verbal update on events and activities. Unfortunately, I don't have my listing. I was looking to see if I had gotten something from one of my staffers. I had ill prepared on that one. I know Viva Calle just happened last weekend. Staff within our parking and downtown operations team is very busy with events citywide. I just don't happen to have a listing of all those that may be happening in the downtown core. But I know it's high time for the various runs and races and walks as they're picking back up. I can touch on the item 8C city council agenda items. I think we mentioned earlier, the item went to council yesterday that we had brought to the board several times, the updates to the parking rate schedule, which included the establishment of the commercial real estate parking program. It was passed by council yesterday. There was one edit to that with a memo presented by Councilmember Perales and the mayor on including one developer downtown at that had began conversations with DOT over a year ago prior to the contemplation of this program, and the direction was to maintain the talked about offer, which does not deviate significantly from the commercial real estate program. It's still the same quantity of permits. It's still within the range of that program. The only significant deviations were a slightly longer term, where the developer would have an option to extend it for up to 10 additional years beyond the standard 10 years, as that was needed for their financing. And then more specificity around the location, being specifically the 4th and San Fernando garage, as opposed to the global permit option that is within the program. So those two changes. So we'll be working with that developer to initiate that agreement here in the next, we'll start working with them now, but I suspect we'll execute that agreement in the next couple of months. Outside of the commercial real estate program, the additional items within that memo included the sunsetting of the clean air vehicle permit program. So that'll sunset after June 30th. So we're working to communicate to those permit holders that that is going away. Some updating of event rate ranges. Some of our rate ranges had been outdated, and so the low end of their ranges were actually well outside of what we had been charging for the last couple of years. So we just brought the floor rate up a little bit in a lot of the rate ranges to eliminate any confusion over what we would be charging for special events. It also established the ability to offer a global permit to all permit holders. So we'll be working over the next couple of months to roll that program out. We did say in the memo that we wouldn't initiate that program any sooner than January. To give us enough time to kind of finalize the technical side of things and having a permit that's good at all facilities versus just one. And then to communicate effectively kind of what that really means to people and what their options are, because people are going to have a choice to be made on, do I want to stick with paying a higher fee to have, say, some specificity and exclusivity on where I park, or do I want to pay a slightly less fee and have the option of parking in any facility, although it matters a little less now that we're not totally impacted, but it'll be good to bring it out sooner rather than later. So I suspect we'll bring something back once we're getting closer to rolling that out, just as a heads up to the board. I'm not aware of any other items on our plate, Heather, specific to parking for council or any committees. No.
All right. Any other business for the good of the board here from any of the members?
I have just
Maybe.
one quick item. Could we get a report maybe in September or November, whatever is appropriate, on what the reaction is from the folks who have lost their, I forgot what you called it again, the electric car thing? You said that you're going to let them know right now, and it ends in June 30th, right?
Yep.
I'd be just curious if you could tell us a little bit about how they react to that.
Sure. To the extent we get any comment back, I can put something on the September. The notification will be coming likely out of the kind of DOT permitting group. It's not necessarily our team. A lot of people get their permit. It's a one-time fee that they paid, and then because the program historically had just auto-renewed, there's not a whole lot of correspondence with these individuals after they paid that. So some people are holding their permit for 5+ years or something, out of sight, out of mind. We don't have contact with them. Some I'm suspecting will be surprised, since they just came to expect that this just annually would be updated. I'm looking at Heather or Elias. We rarely got pinged from anybody saying, hey, is my permit still valid come July 1st? It was a pretty rare occurrence to see those inquiries come, at least to our team. So we'll follow up with the team that kind of manages the permitting and the correspondence and see what we hear back.
Thank you, because it's going to be in sight and in mind, I imagine.
Yeah, and so what I've told our operator, so at least from our operations, is that the customers would previously, they would actually go to the office with their parking ticket and get it validated by physical staff to then leave for free. What happens now is that they just go to the exit, they press the intercom button, and the staff remotely acknowledges their vehicle, that they're on the list and approved, and then zeroes out their transaction and lets them out. I've told my staff that over the next couple of weeks to start telling people, and actually we've been trying to do it as much as possible, that says, hey, FYI, this is coming down the pipe, we're waiting on a response. Now that we have that response and direction, to tell people over the next couple of weeks that do use it, FYI, the program is ending effective, July 1st. So between that and hopefully a mailer or an email blast, we get everybody. And I'll put that on September.
Anything else from the group? Very good. I wish all you a wonderful summer, and Henry will bring us back into line here in September.
September
You know,
7th.
if I miss a meeting, Charlie, you're still in charge.
Wow, absolutely, Henry, but I'll make sure you don't miss any.
I hope not.
Henry has to beat Charlie's record here of 1 hour and 18 minutes. So your goal is 1 hour and 15 minutes next time, Henry.
I agree, David. It shall be done.
All right, everyone, we'll be in touch as it gets closer to that September meeting and whether or not the meetings will be remote, in person, or hybrid. I don't have direction yet on how the city is, addressing the various boards and commissions outside of how we've been doing it to date. So more to come.
Very good.
All right,
Thanks,
cheers,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Okay,
Take
bye.
care.